Okay, so our first project, the movie or TV assignment. For my project or for my TV show, I actually chose Lucifer. Now, before, I would say a few months ago, I was really uncomfortable with watching the series as a whole, but through my other philosophy course that I took and through the materials of this course, I've become a bit more comfortable with the idea of watching it. So I watched the first episode with my wife. She actually loves the show, and she was the one who kind of introduced me to it overall. I really thought that it tied really well hand in hand with everything that we've been covering. And specifically, just the initial pilot episode is what I watched. But I feel like it's connected in so many different ways. But for context purposes, the first episode sets the show up by introducing Lucifer, who's played by an actor whose name I forgot. And basically, the devil is also known as Lucifer in the show, and he's in charge of, or he was put in charge of running hell to punish souls that deserve to be there. However, he decided to quit and just leave and quit to the mortal earth, and he's literally just kind of in a process of finding himself. And throughout the show, people are telling him to start acting like the devil, and they're not really sure what he's doing, and they're kind of confused by his behavior because he's not fulfilling his role as the devil and punishing souls down in hell. Now, that's a really brief description of what happens in the show, just in that first level, but he finds himself helping a detective solve a murder. And he's really intrigued by the detective because she doesn't respond to him in the same way that most mortal people do. She's kind of just responding to him as a normal person. And even just in that first episode, he actually talks about how women have this very specific reaction to him, and they basically desire him because they have these deep, dark desires for usually sex and these naughty desires that they just suppress. That's one thing that I saw right off the bat. Two, obviously the conversation of good versus evil. He is the evil, right? He is, but actually also not evil in the show. He's there with a purpose. It's basically the purpose of punishing. So he was created for this purpose to punish by God. So there's that conversation of omnipotence and omnibenevolence that is brought into the film right away because, well, why would there ever be a need for punishing hellfire? Couldn't God do it himself? Why does he need to have somebody else do it? Is this mean that God created an evil creature to punish beings in an evil way? So does that mean that he's still omnibenevolent, or is he not? Yes, because if he was all powerful, then why would he need someone else to do the punishing? That's another connection that I saw. The omni question brought into the picture. And I think one of the last things that I saw was the behaviors attributed to evil and how that's tied to sex specifically, and not just from the female perspective. I think it was just perspectives overall that there are these subtle little hints at sex being like this lustful thing in the show, even from the get go, which is interesting because it's just very on point with what we have been talking about and what we have been covering, which is sex and lust being this thing that people are supposed to fight against. And I think just through all those different levels or everything that I just laid out, it ties really well into the philosophy of religion and the philosophy of good versus evil. and it is a really good example, and it's also just shot really well. It's written really well. It's a really good example of deconstructing these roles that we have set in place and that are solidified by fear. They're solidified by the male dominated religious views on God and life, and the male dominated society that we live in, and it just starts to kind of deconstruct things in a cinematic way. And I think that at the very least, it's, even though it's uncomfortable, it's something that is interesting for me to view with my background, but also it just falls right in line with, again, everything that we've been covering. And I did kind of enjoy it. It had its funny comedic moments. It it was a little I would say triggering, not in a bad way. It just kind of brings up these feelings of discomfort and of aversion. I used to be super averted to it, but now and even though I'm watching it and kind of taking it in, it's still something that causes this reaction, this knee jerk reaction, just because it's so ingrained in me that anything that shows the devil, that portrays the devil, is something that I'm not supposed to look at, which also shows the psychological effects or the impacts of that sort of narrative just being something that I was exposed to from a really early age and to now, to the point where even talking about it still gets me feeling a little sick. And it's really weird to see it from the outside perspective, or just from me looking at myself and wondering why is it that I'm feeling these things. Like, I don't understand, but it makes sense because psychologically I was trained to respond this way, and so my body does. And that is also a very realistic, very first-hand experience, a very important thing that's a byproduct of, I would say, the religious dogma of the white guy in the sky versus the red guy on the floor, or, amongst everybody, the devil that's misleading the world, quote unquote, which is misleading the world. So it's just a big arrow straight into the heart of the issues that we're talking about. And I wouldn't say that they're issues, but they're questions, right? We're talking about the questions that we don't want to talk about. We're talking about the things that are taboo, and it's an intense emotional roller coaster. But I think it's important to go down. So